Have you ever met someone who doesn't need to say a single word yet still captures the attention of an entire room? No raised voice, no arguments, no attempt to look intimidating. They simply stand there, calm and silent, and every pair of eyes is naturally drawn to them. In a loud country like the United States, where everyone wants to talk more, prove more, and show more, silence becomes a rare form of power. And it is precisely that rarity that makes it so intimidating. Imagine standing in front of a predator. It does not roar, it does not charge at you, it does not make a sound. It just watches. That very lack of action makes your heart beat faster, because you have no idea what will happen next. People are the same. The most dangerous person is rarely the loud one, but the one you cannot predict. And when you cannot predict them, you begin to fear them. Stoic philosophy teaches that the person who is silent yet in control of themselves is the strongest in the room. You do not need to react to chaos. You do not need to respond to insults. You do not need to prove your worth. When you remain steady, calm, and still, you force others to adjust themselves around you. And that is the moment when the power shifts to your side. In this video, we will explore 7 silent strategies that make your enemies fear you without saying a single word. Let's begin. Strategy 1. Master your emotions. In a life in the United States, a fast, stressful environment filled with invisible friction, your emotions can become either your greatest strength or the trap that makes you lose yourself. Most people react on instinct. Someone says something disrespectful, they snap back. Someone provokes them, they rush to prove themselves right. Someone insults them, they get angry immediately. But when you react too quickly, you are no longer the one in control of the situation. You become the one who is controlled. The Stoics understood the true nature of conflict. An enemy does not need to strike you with their fists. They only need to make you fight against your own emotions. When you lose your temper, you lose control. When you lose control, you lose your power. And when you lose your power, you become the weaker one in the situation, no matter how loudly you shout. What makes your enemies fear you the most is not your anger. It is when you do not react the way they expect, when they provoke you and you remain calm, when they mock you and you stay silent, when they try to push you off balance emotionally, but you stand firm as if nothing ever touched you. That moment unsettles them because they realize they have no power over you. I once knew a man like that. Let's call him Thomas. For years at his workplace, he had a colleague who loved provoking others, making sarcastic comments, talking behind people's backs, and deliberately creating conflict. At first, Thomas reacted, he explained, he argued, he defended himself. And every time he tried to protect himself, the other person became even more satisfied because they had successfully touched his emotions. One day, Thomas realized a simple truth. Every time I lose my temper, I hand my power to someone else, and he decided to stop. From that day on, every jab, every sarcastic remark, every attempt to provoke him fell into silence. Thomas did not get angry, did not explain, did not fight back. He simply looked at the man with calm eyes, then returned to his work. What happened next was remarkable. The other man began to lose control. He grew louder, tried harder to provoke Thomas. But the more he tried, the weaker he looked. Eventually, he stopped. Not because Thomas defeated him, but because there was nothing left for him to control. That is the power of mastering your emotions. Not only do you protect your own inner peace, but you also make your opponent lose theirs. The Stoics said, to be close to calmness is to be close to power. When you control your reactions, you control the outcome. When you refuse to let anyone push you out of your calmness, you become untouchable. And in a world full of challenges, the person who cannot be provoked is the one enemies fear the most. Strategy 2. Build an unbending presence. There is a kind of strength that requires no words, no noise, and no display. The moment you walk into a room, the atmosphere shifts. Some people make others fall silent without giving a single command. Some make their enemies cautious just by entering space. This is not the strength of muscles, authority, or status. It is an unshakable presence, a silent power sharper than any threat. In the United States, where people speak fast, think fast, and react fast, silence and steadiness become rare qualities. Most people move with rushed energy, filled with tension and insecurity. But the person who possesses an unshakable presence is different. They walk into a room with a calmness that makes it seem as if they fully belong there. They are not hurried, not frantic, not seeking attention. And it is precisely this that makes others pay attention to them. The Stoics understood that silence is a source of great strength. Your stillness is not withdrawal, it is self-mastery. It sends a very clear signal. You are not shaped by your surroundings. You control your own pace, and that forces others to adjust themselves to you. Imagine seeing someone standing with their back straight, shoulders open, walking slowly but decisively, with a calm yet sharp gaze. A person like that does not need to say anything to prove their worth. Their minimal movements alone create pressure on those who are trying to hide their own insecurity. When they look at you, it is not a threatening look, it is a fearless one. And when someone is not afraid of you, you begin to fear them. I once knew a person like that. Let's call him Ethan. Ethan was not big nor loud, but every time he walked into a meeting, the whole room automatically shifted. People sat up straighter, spoke slower, and became more careful with their words. Not because Ethan had authority, but because he carried a level of steadiness no one wanted to disturb. Ethan did not talk much. He observed, he listened, and whenever he did speak, even a single sentence was enough to make the entire room pause and think. Ethan never tried to appear important. He never tried to be the center of attention, but his absolute calmness created a gravitational pull that no one could ignore. People like him make enemies hesitate, not because they are aggressive, but because they are unpredictable. And that is the secret. When you are so steady that no one can shake you, you become the person your enemies fear the most. Because the one who cannot be shaken is also the one who cannot be controlled. Strategy 3, let your actions speak. In life in the United States, you will quickly notice one thing. People talk a lot. They talk about goals, talk about plans, talk about big ambitions, talk about what they are about to do. Everyone makes declarations, everyone makes promises, but very few actually take action. And because of that, in a world where words have become so cheap that no one really believes them anymore, the person who stays silent and gets to work becomes the most intimidating person in the room. The Stoics understood this long ago. Do not waste time explaining your philosophy. Live by it. They did not believe in promises. They believed only in what you could build through persistence, discipline, and consistent action. They knew that words create expectations, but action creates reality, and reality is always stronger than any promise. Look at the world around you. The people who talk about changing rarely change. The people who say they will start a business often never start. The people who say they want to become better usually stay exactly where they are. Words are where people find comfort. Action is where people face reality. And because reality is difficult, very few dare to step into it. But the one who does step into it, even in silence, is the one who makes enemies tremble. I once knew a man like that. Let's call him Jack. Jack used to be the kind of person who talked a lot. Talked about wanting a promotion, wanting to earn more money, wanting to start his own company, wanting to change himself. He talked every day to anyone willing to listen. But for months, he did nothing. He didn't study, he didn't plan, he didn't take action. And the people around him slowly began to see him as someone who loved to talk, but never dared to act. Until one day, Jack went silent. No more declarations, no more showing off plans, no more talking about goals. He disappeared from pointless conversations and started working. Quiet action, silent learning, improving himself little by little, one small step each day, but never quitting. And then, a few months later, he reappeared with a result no one expected. The project finished, the achievements visible, his skills dramatically elevated, without a single warning. That silence created a bigger impact than anything he had ever said before. The people who once underestimated him suddenly became cautious, because they realized they had no idea what he had been doing, no idea when he had improved, and no idea what he would do next. A person who works in silence is always the one enemies fear the most, because they cannot predict him. And that is the power of action. When you stay silent and do the work, you don't need to speak. Your results will be the loudest voice. Strategy 4. Do not react to insults. In a society like the United States, where words can become weapons and insults happen every day, you must understand one truth. An insult is not an attack. It is a trap. And most people fall into that trap instantly. A sharp comment, a sarcastic remark, a little mockery, and they react immediately. They get angry, argue back, defend themselves, even try to prove they are right. But the moment they react, they have already lost, because they have allowed their emotions to be controlled by someone else. The Stoics had an unshakable principle. No one can insult you unless you allow it. An insult is only sound. It is harmless unless you let it touch your inner world. But if you get angry, if you react, if your heartbeat rises and your voice gets louder, then the insult has already won. Not because it was true, but because you handed over control of your emotions to someone else. The attacker never aims to defeat you with logic. They want to see you lose control. They do not need to win the argument. They only need to watch you become chaotic. When you get angry, you become predictable, easy to guide, easy to manipulate. And a person who is easy to manipulate is always the easiest prey. I once knew a woman like that. Let's call her Linda. Linda worked in a highly competitive environment where backhanded comments happened as regularly as having a morning cup of coffee. She had a colleague who deliberately provoked her, making sarcastic remarks in meetings, spreading rumors, dropping soft but poisonous insults. At first, Linda reacted. She argued back, she explained herself, she tried to prove her worth. But the more she reacted, the more satisfaction the other person showed, because he saw it clearly. I can control her emotions. But then Linda changed. She stopped reacting. No more explanations. No more defending herself. When she was mocked, she simply looked directly at him with a calm gaze and went back to her work. She gave the provocateur the one thing he did not want: silence. And something strange happened. The provocateur began to lose his composure. He raised his voice more, tried harder to sound sharp, and tried to corner Linda. But the more he tried, the more ridiculous he appeared. The entire office started looking at him with annoyance. And Linda? She stood there, silent, untouched, completely unfazed. The truth is this: an insult does not weaken you. Your reaction does. A sentence cannot touch you unless you open the door and let it in. And when you remain calm, you force the other person to confront their own pettiness. They expose their true nature without you having to say a single word. That is the power of Stoicism. Remaining silent in the face of insult is not weakness. It is a declaration that you cannot be controlled. And for an enemy, nothing is more terrifying than someone they cannot provoke. Strategy 5. Control what others know about you. In the age of social media in the United States, where people share everything, their feelings, plans, goals, and even their private struggles, mystery becomes a rare form of power. Most people reveal far too much. They talk about their fears, their failures, their expectations, even things that should never be spoken out loud. And by doing so, they unknowingly hand others a map of exactly how to attack them. The Stoics understood one truth clearly: what others know too much about becomes your weakness, because people cannot destroy what they cannot see. They can only break what you choose to put under the spotlight. A person who speaks little is not quiet because they are shy. They speak little because they understand the value of silence. A person who does not share too much is not isolated. They keep things private because they know that information is power, and the one who controls information is the one who controls the game. I once knew a person like that. Let's call him Chris. In the past, Chris believed that sharing more would help him build connections. He talked about his goals, his private worries, the things that made him feel insecure. But then he discovered a harsh truth. People do not receive your vulnerability with empathy. They receive it with curiosity, or worse, with self-interest. The things Chris shared slowly turned into tools others used against him. When he admitted he feared failure, they began doubting his ability. When he mentioned he was struggling, they started testing his limits. When he said he wanted a promotion, they began competing with him and blocking his path. And then Chris decided to change. He stopped talking about his personal life. He gave short answers. He no longer shared personal stories. He stopped revealing his goals. He stopped exposing his weaknesses. He only showed what was safe and kept everything important to himself. And something remarkable happened. He became unpredictable. People started asking themselves, what is he thinking? What is he planning? Is he already ahead of us? That curiosity quickly turned into caution, because no one can attack someone they know nothing about. The Stoic said, know when to speak and know when to remain silent. When you share only 5% and keep 95% to yourself, you become someone others cannot control. A person who is hard to read is a person who is hard to defeat. A person who reveals no weaknesses is a person who cannot be manipulated. And someone who stays silent about their plans keeps their enemies in a constant state of anxiety, because they never know when you will make your next move. Controlling information is not living fake. It is living wisely. It is protecting your inner world from untrustworthy eyes. And it is the strategy that turns you into someone who cannot be touched. When others do not know what you think, what you want, or where you are vulnerable, they cannot hurt you. And this very unpredictability is what makes your enemies fear you the most. Controlling information is not living fake. It is living wisely. It is protecting your inner world from untrustworthy eyes. And it is the strategy that turns you into someone who cannot be touched. When others do not know what you think, what you want, or where you are vulnerable, they cannot hurt you. And this very unpredictability is what makes your enemies fear you the most. Strategy 6. Move in silence. We are living in a strange era. People announce their plans before they even begin, show off victories before they are truly earned, and speak of success as if it is already guaranteed. But the truly powerful are different. They do not talk about their journey. They do not announce every step. They do not seek validation. They turn everything into action in silence, in the dark, unseen and unpredictable. And it is this silence that makes them frightening. In the United States, where everyone is chasing attention and the approval of others, your silence makes you stand out. While others talk about their goals, you work. While others show off their plans, you work. While others seek praise, you keep working. By the time they are still talking, you are already 3 steps ahead. No need for announcements. No need for declarations. When you show up with results, you leave them unprepared and overwhelmed. The Stoics said, do not explain your philosophy, live it. That is the essence of the power found in silence. You do not need promises. You do not need to prove anything. You do not need to justify yourself. You let your actions tell your story. And when you return with results in your hands, the world will ask, when did he do this? How did we not know? It is not knowing that scares them. That is the power of moving in silence. It makes opponents unable to block you, unable to stop you, unable to interfere, because they do not know what you are doing. And by the time they realize you have already moved far ahead, every opportunity to hinder you is already too late. Remember this, your enemies do not fear what you say you will do. They fear what you do without saying a word. When you stay silent, you give no one a chance to sabotage your plans. You give all your energy to action, where words can never compete. And when your results finally appear, your silence becomes the strongest blow to those who once doubted you. Strategy 7. Live authentically, without asking for permission, without seeking approval. There is a type of power that makes enemies tremble without you uttering a single word. It is when you live true to who you are, without asking for permission, without explaining, without trying to make anyone comfortable. In the United States, where everyone is constantly seeking approval, where people adjust their tone to fit in, adjust their personality to be liked, adjust their behavior to avoid judgment, a person who dares to live honestly, directly, and unapologetically becomes an unpredictable and intimidating force. Most people walk around wearing masks. They smile when they don't want to smile. They try to blend in so they won't be judged. They swallow the truth just to keep the peace. But when you walk into a room without a mask, you unsettle them. You become a mirror reflecting everything they have lost: authenticity, inner freedom, self-respect. And that is why they fear you. Not because you will attack them, but because simply by existing as your true self, you remind them of their own weakness. The Stoics always reminded us, do not try to be a good person by someone else's definition. Be a good person on your own. When you let go of the need for approval, you become impossible to control. You are no longer swayed by praise or criticism. You are no longer defined by other people's expectations. You stand firm like a rock in the ocean, and the waves of public opinion simply wash over the surface without ever shaking you. Authenticity is a weapon. It does not attack anyone, but it makes the inauthentic feel exposed. When you live truthfully, you are not only free, you make those who cannot live truthfully feel threatened. And in the Stoic strategy of silent power, this is the final form of strength. You do not need to speak to make enemies fear you. You only need to be yourself. Remember this: a person who seeks acceptance is easy to control. A person who does not need acceptance cannot be touched. When you live as your true self, without asking for permission, without explaining, without lowering your standards just to fit in, you become someone every enemy would rather avoid. When you look back at these 7 silent strategies, you will realize something important. You do not need to shout to be respected. You do not need to threaten to be feared. You only need to master the one thing most people never learn to control: yourself. When you remain calm while others panic, you become different. When you stay quiet while others are loud, you stand out. When you live authentically in a world full of masks, you become a threat to those who are too afraid to do the same. Real power does not lie in reaction. It lies in the ability not to react. It does not lie in proving something. It lies in not needing to prove anything at all. The Stoics always aim for victory within, and once you conquer yourself, every enemy outside becomes small. You become someone whose mere presence makes others cautious. Not because you are aggressive, but because you are unpredictable. Not because you are threatening, but because you cannot be controlled. If these insights resonate with you, leave a comment. I move in silence. It tells me you are stepping into a stronger version of yourself. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss the next Stoic lesson, where we continue building calm, strength, and wisdom in a chaotic world. See you in the next video, and keep becoming the kind of person whose silence alone commands attention.